Hi everyone, this is Mary Agnes Green and I'm going to take you through my unit design for the final project. To introduce my unit, students will learn about several famous European explorers. They will understand important vocabulary words related to this topic. Students will also research the goals, routes, and outcomes of each explorer's journey. Finally, they will compare and contrast all of the information that they have found. Some questions that I would like students to consider as we're working through the unit. Where were they going? What were they trying to find? And will they reach their destination and goal? Toward the end of the unit, students will realize that a lot of the famous European explorers had three different goals in mind. One of them was to find riches or wealth. Another one was to spread their own religion. And the last one was simply to become famous. The learners that I'm trying to reach in this unit are fifth grade students who are 10 and 11 years old. In this specific class period, there are 23 students. 19 students are white, 2 students are African American, and 2 students are Hispanic. Several students have Spanish or Arabic language backgrounds. If you look at the word cloud on the screen, you will see the word differentiation across the middle, and you will also see IEP, 504, ELL, so this is another example of the types of learners that I am trying to reach. There are 4 IEP students. One student has a speech and social goal, while the others have reading and writing goals. Although the ELL students no longer receive special services, they do require a lot of differentiated instruction and vocabulary reinforcement, which you will see is a focus of this unit. Overall, these students are visual learners and they benefit from interactive activities using diagrams or even models. On this screen, you will see the standards and the objectives that will be the focus of the unit. The arrows show the correlation between the standards and the objectives that they follow. So on the left-hand side, the first standard explaining relationships among individuals and events, and this will be focusing on the European explorers. So students will gather this information using a web quest. The next standard is about vocabulary, which students will be using Quizlet and other iPad applications, and they will be assessed using Google Forms. The last standard is comparing and contrasting. So this is one that will be addressed towards the end of the unit as students compile all of the information that they have learned about the European explorers' routes, their goals, and the outcomes of their journey. Identify teaching and learning strategies. The theory that I think works well for this unit is the dual coding theory by Alan Pavia. I think that this is appropriate because it incorporates both visual and verbal features. So in terms of the verbal language, I will be encouraging students to use collaborative conversations. They might do this while working with a peer or by recording their voice and uploading it as a podcast onto a Padlet board. And from there, students can also give each other written feedback about whatever it is that they are recording their podcast on. In terms of the visual learning, students will be using images that they're creating on their own or that I'm providing. I will be providing maps, and the students will also be creating their own maps, and they will also be viewing videos using the web quest. The prescriptive strategy that applies to this unit is Madeline Hunter's ITIP. This is a decision-making model for planning direct instruction. I think that this is a great strategy for this unit because it offers a series of steps that help focus the lesson or help focus the unit throughout. So it is always important to start by creating objectives, which we have talked about. And then from there, engage the students' thinking. So in the anticipatory set, Hunter suggests starting with a short motivating activity which will help engage students and access background knowledge. Next, I will share the objectives with the students. From there, I will, after a couple activities relating to the content, I will check for understanding. Hunter recommends using Bloom's taxonomies, multi-level questioning techniques, which will develop the student's understanding. It offers more collaborative conversations, and it could help target some areas that might need reteaching or reinforcement. And lastly, the guided practice phase is where students are working more independently and the teacher is acting as a facilitator. So you will see what that activity looks like when we get to the day-to-day activities. On this slide, we have the technologies that I will be using. So like I mentioned, students will be recording their voices in podcasts and uploading them to a Padlet board, which you see in the middle. This acts like a web blogging tool. They will be using Nat Geo Mapmaker. So on this interactive map making site, the students will be using the tools on the side to draw in different routes that the explorers took. They will also be adding text features and other icons. So that's an example of how they will use this technology. Students will be using Quizlet and they will search for a deck that I have created by using the search bar in the corner. And they will also be using an iPad application called Erasma. So I just want to show a quick video about how this tool will be used with the students. So there is a trigger image that the students will scan with their iPad, and that will then link to some type of visual feature. They're very interactive. It could link to a URL as well. Okay, so here are the day-to-day activities. As mentioned on day one, that's the anticipatory set that Hunter discusses. So this is going to engage the students in the entire unit. And students will be writing their own journal entry describing a trip they would like to take with their family. So some questions that they are going to answer in the journal are, where would you go? What tools would you use to help plan? What tools do you need when you get to your destination? And how will you find your way when you get there? From there, students will record their entry as a podcast, and then they will upload it to a Padlet page where they will be required to respond and give feedback to 2 other peers in their class period, as well as 2 other students in another class period. On day 2, I will introduce the objectives of the unit. Students will look at the vocabulary words using Quizlet. I will then assign pairs of students 1 vocabulary word that they will discuss. Using an iPad, each pair will record themselves talking about the definition, its importance, and they will create a skit to help us remember the word. They will then design a trigger image on a piece of paper, which will be used for the Erasma app. And that trigger image will link to their video that they created. So these will be posted around the room for students to scan, and then they can start to learn the vocabulary words in this way. Day 3 will be the web quest, which will be the main research of the explorers. So students will follow the tabs on the left-hand side. They will watch a quick video, and then they will eventually get to the task, which has several explorers, and it has questions that they should consider as they watch these videos and they read the different articles on the explorers. Day 4 is the day that the students will be creating their Nat Geo Mapmaker. So they will be researching different routes that the explorers took, and they will be trying to recreate those routes using the Mapmaker. Day 5, they will post their maps and onto Padlet, and they will provide peer feedback. On day 6, students will work with a partner. They will pick 2 explorers to compare and contrast, looking at their goals. Did they meet their goals? What were the routes that they took? What countries sponsored them? What obstacles did they face? And what discoveries did they have? And the students will record their voices in a podcast and also upload this onto a Padlet page. Lastly, day 7 will be the assessment. Here are 2 examples of handouts. On the right, students will be receiving this handout on the first day. So the top box is just an introduction of the topic. We have the goals and the vocabulary, and the bottom portion is the first and the second task that they will be doing on day 1. On the left, this is a handout that will be a trigger image for the Erasmus app when students begin to research the routes that the explorers took. This will then take them to the Nat Geo Map Maker where they will create their own route. Here is a sample student artifact of what their route might look like. This one is for Henry Hudson, so some of the features they need to include are on here. The starting point, where they sailed from, where they sailed to, what year did they travel, and who is this, or what explorer is being represented here. And then this will be posted onto a Padlet page. Conceptual categorization using the SAMR model. So I think that this unit is an example of redefinition because students are using technology as a form of collaboration. The Padlet acts like a type of blog where students can share their ideas, they can engage in conversations, they can give constructive feedback to their peers, and having the students respond to peers outside of their own class period is a new task that would not be feasible without this technology tool. Also, the Nat Geo Map Maker is an example of a modification. So students could, of course, draw a route that one of the explorers took on a piece of paper using a map. But what the Nat Geo Map Maker allows for is, to add more visual features that would not be possible without this piece of technology. But overall, I think that the collaborative conversations and the use and variety of visual and language features will definitely enhance this unit. And on the side, I thought this was a pretty important quote related to the SAMR model, that it's not about the app, it's about the task. So it really is how you're designing the different activities and how the students will be using the technology tools. So it's not really about what the technology offers, but how you expect the students to use it. And last but not least, students will be evaluated using an assessment. Part 1 will be vocabulary on Google Forms. Part 2 will be paper and pencil, where students will view different maps that have routes that explorers took, and they will have to identify which explorers took those routes. There will be some short answer comparing and contrasting questions for several of the explorers. Some modifications for my IEP students will be word banks for the vocabulary, maybe fill in the blank or multiple choice. And last but not least, the student survey and reflection. I use Google Forms a lot to get student feedback of how they think the unit design was. Did they like using the technology? Did they think that it was effective? So this is just a way for them to reflect on the unit as a whole, and also give me feedback if I need to redesign the unit for future lessons. And last but not least, this is the list of my references. Well, thank you for listening.